Rik Reverb, the Diabolical DJ, is the third boss of the Liberation of Undermine Raid in World of Warcraft: The War Within. This is a two-phase boss fight. In phase 1, you're going to be managing the energy level of a bunch of amplifiers, making sure they don't overload. And in phase 2, you're going to be doing some bouncing, jumping over electrical waves. Alright, to start off this boss fight, the active tank needs to be the only target in front of him. Every attack he does is a cone in front of him that stacks a debuff on target's hit. This debuff will increase all sonic damage taken for every stack that you have, and every bit of damage in this fight is sonic, so you're going to need to avoid this if you're not the active tank. Tanks need to swap off at 4 to 5 stacks to make sure nobody gets overwhelmed by the debuff. Shortly after being pulled, he's going to begin summoning his first set of amplifiers. 2 circles will show up, one underneath him and one on top of one of your ranged players. These will drop down amplifiers after delay and deal damage to targets underneath. Avoid the circles and move him away from the amplifiers. If he's ever near one of them, he's going to charge them up at a much faster rate. Throughout the fight, these amplifiers are going to be doing 2 things. First, they're slowly building up energy. And second, they're sending out shockwaves. Anybody that gets hit by these increases the energy of the amplifier and takes some damage. On Heroic, if you get hit by these twice, you become entranced and will begin walking towards the boss and be targetable by allies. After taking enough damage, you'll snap out of it. If the amplifier ever gets to 100 energy, it's going to go haywire, doing massive AoE damage to the entire raid. So we can't let that happen. To stop this, players need to channel into the amps. This will drain energy out of the amplifier and stack a debuff onto the player that's channeling. This debuff will increase damage taken by the channel effect for 45 seconds. So one player can drain down a pillar while receiving healing, and then will not be able to drain another pillar until their debuff falls off. It's really important to make sure these towers gain as little energy as possible, so you're going to be needing to avoid all of the sound-based effects, because eventually you're going to get overwhelmed with everybody having the debuff. The boss fight has constant damage going on non-stop, so you can't ever let anybody get too low, or a tick will take them out. He's going to mark a player with a blue beam. The blue beam will follow the player, and after delay, unleash an attack. In normal and heroic difficulties, the player that gets this beam needs to just point it away from all other players and eat the attack solo, preferably with a defensive ability to reduce the incoming damage. Periodically, he's going to mark a couple of players with blue circles around them. They're going to zap anybody within their radius for some damage. Those players need to spread out, and people need to stay out of their range. These blue circles also increase your nature damage taken, so you cannot do the channel into the pillars while you have the circle on you. On heroic difficulty, he'll summon a set of fireworks. These will land randomly around the arena and need to be burned down. Every time you hit one of these, you get a stacking buff that increases your movement speed and haste. So you're going to want to focus on these things to get the big buffs. After delay, each of the fireworks is going to explode, and if more than 2 explode, it's going to be a raid wipe. You need to coordinate where these things land and AoE them down as quickly as possible. If there's one significantly out of the way of the others, you might just need to let that one explode, using a healing defensive cooldown to survive the blast. Upon reaching maximum energy, Rik Reverb begins the intermission phase. During this phase, one of the amplifiers will gain a blue circle around it. All players need to rush to that amplifier and stand within its blue ring. The boss will release a shockwave out from him, and when the shockwave touches the blue ring, all players inside it get bounced up in the air and over top of the shockwave. Any player that does not bounce is going to take significant damage and likely die to this effect. The entire intermission phase is just running to the next amplifier that has the blue ring and waiting for the shockwave to land. All throughout the intermission, the boss has 99% reduced damage taken, so there's no point in attacking him. You just need to channel the pillars and stand in the blue circles. This fight is just going to be a loop back and forth between the 2 phases. The 3rd time he enters this intermission phase, it just never ends, and it's a wipe mechanic. I hope this guide helped you figure out how to take down Rik Reverb. If you want the mythic strategies, you're going to have to check that guide out over here. I'm Zesty Fresh with Sazaze Games, and we'll catch you guys next time. Sazaze.